So let's start by opening up the manual. So we do get a couple SnapMaker stickers and our quick start guide, which is a pretty thick book and looks like fully colored in this really high quality paper. So yeah, when you buy SnapMaker, you really get the best of the best when it comes to presentation. So let's see here. So we got the breakdown of before you start, machine assembly, 3D printing, laser, and CNC. So yeah, it kind of goes through some safety precautions here, things like that. Our parts list, the tools included, and some material pieces. And they do have some video tutorials you can watch online. And here we have the machine assembly. All right, well, yeah, looks like this is a pretty involved kind of process, which should be fun, of 24 steps. Pretty excited to get started here building it. So yeah, and then we go into our tool heads and how to use them and things like that. So yeah, very great detailed quick start guide that's pretty thorough. All right, so we've seen the linear modules, which are 20 millimeter, 300 millimeter strokes. So let's go ahead and take them all out of the box. And there are 5 of them, so quite a few to unbox. So let's check out this power module. So this is like the power supply for the whole system. So yeah, very clean. We got some venting here, looks like. The logo. And on the bottom, we got some rubber feet. And this is a 24 volt, 320 watts power supply. And on the back here, we got the venting fan, connection port, the input power port, and the off and on switch. Very nicely designed and high quality piece here. So this box has the touchscreen and controller. Again, very nicely packed. So the controller is like a module that you plug everything into and then it distributes where everything goes. It's kind of like a large junction box, and yeah, very nicely constructed again. And that's definitely going to be the theme of this printer, as everything's going to feel high quality and metal. And also it says make something wonderful. And here we have the touchscreen display, which looks very nice. It's quite thin. Also very nicely built. The quality is just superb on all these parts. The cable is hard connected to the screen and then plugs with the USB Type-C on the other end and can stretch. And also there's a mount that's magnetic. You can see the 2 little magnets that this thing connects to once we install it all. So here we have a box that says cables, and this just has our different kind of cables that we'll need. The power cord looks like about 4 feet or so, a USB cable, and another interconnecting cable. So here we have a box that says adapters and brackets, and these are really nicely made pieces for the assembly to the printer, and this is quite interesting. So it looks like some kind of little junction box that plugs in one and then 2 come out on the other end. Everything is extremely high quality and built and presented like I've never seen before. So here's our box that has the 3 tool heads, which comprises of a 3D printing head, laser head, and CNC. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. This is how they're packed. So here we have the 3D printing module, and it is very high quality. It's all metal. This is where our filament goes in. Connection. There's a little door here. Venting on the sides. This is what the back looks like. More venting on the other side. And on the bottom, we can see our heat block, the nozzle, and then the cooling fan duct that blows underneath. And also a little sensor for the auto leveling. Very nice. So yeah, very high quality, great looking piece, and it's not too heavy surprisingly, but feels very solid as it is all metal. Here we have a piece that's a bit heavier, and this is the CNC machine. Yeah, this is basically a motor that spins really quick, and you put a tool to carve. And yeah, this thing's built the same way as the print head. On the top it connects. Yeah, very robust, and this one's quite a bit heavier, as I'm guessing the motor in there is pretty heavy duty, which is nice to see. And for the last module, we have the laser, and this one's quite a bit lighter. And it is a 1600 milliwatt powered laser. Got a little danger sticker here. The laser itself is in here. And what's interesting is it looks like we got some kind of sensor or camera of some sort, or at least that's what it appears to be. We'll see. But yeah, pretty much built the same way. We got the plug up here. Yeah. Very nice, again, for these tool heads. I'm gonna move this out of the way. So here we have a pretty large box of tools and accessories. And there's actually a toolbox in here with a bunch of things inside, hardware and stuff like that. And then we got goggles. And we'll open this up a little later in the video. Let's go ahead and see what kind of filament we got. It is a full roll, which is very nice. So I guess it says right here, black PLA. Even the filament is nestled in foam here, and actually is SnapMaker branded. Love it that they include a whole kilogram of filament to get you started. All right, so we got a couple more large boxes left. This one says work platform, 3D printing, CNC, and laser. And all of the different pieces that you need to work with the different tool heads. So on the top here we have, looks like some stuff inside. sure enough, we get a few things like a little SnapMaker cloth, looks like, for cleaning maybe the screen. A couple calibration cards, like little pieces of paper, and this is probably good for setting your offset on the nozzles. And then we get a piece of acrylic and also a piece of wood. So the acrylic could be used for the engraving and the wood for a lasering. And there's a couple pieces of these. So as you guys can see, you get everything you need to get started. So the large platform appears to be the actual 3D printed bed, and look how large that is, guys. And this is a 320 by 350 by 330 tall volume that you can print. This is what the back of it looks like. So it looks like we got a bunch of magnets and a sensor here, and I'm assuming that this is probably heated, but we'll find out. And so this upper portion actually comes off, and it is the same on both sides, which is really cool. So you can use one or the other, and it's pretty flexible, so it's like a steel sheet. And this is the piece below, which does appear to be heated. I see these are the elements. It does have a heat picture here. So yeah, very nice, high quality parts here and very impressive. So below that we have, looks like part of something, unless this might be the frame. That's kind of what it looks like, but lightweight, looks like cast aluminum, very nicely built. And going even deeper there, we have another build platform, also looks like connects to our build frame. Yeah, I guess you can interchange the bed to serve the different purposes going between the 3D printing and CNC. And the last piece in this box is some aluminum channels, and they're pretty thin, almost look like heat sinks, and there's 4 of them, and so this is used for laser. So yeah, they kind of go together and make a whole build plate. Yeah guys, the amount of attention to detail on this SnapMaker is just incredible. So that's everything for this box. And so the last piece is this really thin base platform. Wow, check this thing out, guys. It is huge. Again, looks like casted aluminum, and we have manufacturing label here. And wow, check this thing out. A beautiful piece. And we got a SnapMaker logo here. So it looks like we mount everything to this main bottom plate. Very cool. And that is everything with the unpacking. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up here a bit, organize all these parts, and we'll start putting it together. So I moved a few things around, but I realized we still need to check out what's in here. So we got the toolbox, and here we have goggles, and that's gonna be darker ones for the laser and clear ones for the CNC. And these look nice and high quality, full size goggles. Very nice to see that safety is included. So here we have a toolbox. Underneath the toolbox, there's actually, looks like a kit for clamping things down. And this is a really nice parts here. They're all aluminum. Yeah, again, very impressive with everything that's included with this printer. So let's quickly look what's in this box. And I don't know how quickly we can do that, as there's quite a few things in there. So here I got all the bags that looks like are hardware, and they're all labeled. And there's quite a few of them, as you guys can see. So yeah, this is definitely going to be quite involved of putting this thing together. So it looks like we get an extra hot end key block and nozzle tip, some snippers. Very nice. It's crazy how everything is individually packed. And here we have a little spatula, and this is good to kind of get under the nozzle and maybe even pry like a print off or something. But yeah, very nice little spatula. We also get some tweezers that could be useful. A couple open-ended wrenches, and these are really nice quality. Got a 14 and a 17. Kind of curious what these are for. Okay, so it looks like some kind of dividers maybe. So yeah, I think that's what that is, and they actually go here in the toolbox. You can divide different sections between each other. So this one here is probably your most important tool, because this is the screwdriver or the driver and the tool that you will use to put this thing together. Very nice piece. It's aluminum finished, and yeah, just a beautiful thing. And on the bottom looks like we have, okay, yeah, we have the tips there, the different sizes. Super impressive, guys, for all this stuff that's included with this printer. Here we also have something interesting. Okay, so it's just a Velcro here to organize cables. A little bracket to something. Here we have a tube, looks like CNC part, collect a nut. Okay, so this is kind of like the chuck that bites the bit, which also comes with 2 bits for cutting and carving. So yeah, very cool. And the last thing here is we got a USB thumb drive that's in its own little case here. And it's nice and chrome, very premium feeling. So yeah, that is everything in this toolbox. So I'm gonna organize some of this stuff and we'll start putting it together. All right, so let's open the quick start guide. We'll go to page 14, which is our first step in the assembly. And so we're gonna start with this main plate and install the 4 rubber feet on each corner. And here it tells us what bolts we need, which is the M410. And that's actually a packet that has everything we need with the feet and the bolts. All right, so let's flip this main plate around. and install the 4 rubber feet on each corner. So yeah, very impressed with this screwdriver, and we can find the bit that we need, pull it out, install it, and it's all magnetic. At the bottom back in, put our bolt on there, and we'll start our first foot here. So these are compressed style feet, so the harder you tighten, the more it compresses. So once it gets pretty tight, just go a little more and that should be enough. You don't want to over compress the piece of rubber. So that's our second one, third, and the last one here. All right, that was very simple. For the next step, we need to grab 2 20mm linear rails, and these are going to be our y-axes. So after that, they want us to align the sliding brackets so they're even, and I think we can move this piece for now. If we set them down like this, you guys can see that they sort of line up, or these are close, except this one needs to go down a little bit. So we can just go ahead and push that down and it moves around. And all you're trying to do is just kind of squish them together while they're both sitting flat, so they're pretty much right where they need to be. And this is just so it's easier to line them up later to the frame. And speaking about the frame, you're going to need this piece next. And so that takes us to step 4, which we're going to combine these together. And there's a note here making sure that you got this piece here right side up. And also we're going to need 8 M48 bolts. So to know the correct way is if you look at the bottom, you can kind of see like this nut there that's threaded into this casted frame, and all of the little nuts need to go up, and this running horizontally, and the rest should be symmetrical. So with our cables going out, we're going to line up right here on the frame. So let's grab our M48 bolts. There's going to be 2 of them on each side of the channel. So try to tighten this as hard as you can because we don't have much leverage here with this kind of screwdriver. So don't be afraid to go really tight. And yeah, our first one's on. Let's go ahead and put our second one same way. All right, this is what we got. So for step 5, we're going to take the base where we put the rubber feet on and set it on top of these channels. And according to this picture, we can see that the cutout or the handle part goes to the back with the wires. And also there's a note down here to make sure that the linear rails sit flushly inside the grooves of the base. And we're going to need 16 M48 bolts. So let's put these wires to the back and grab our base. So this cutout here goes towards the wiring, and this should sit right on top and kind of fall in. So it has to go into the grooves for it to work. If you lined up your channels closely, everything should line up. So if it doesn't, you can try to, move them back and forth because they do still move. So if you do need to move one, you can just push it linear rail here while holding the bottom and it will move back and forth. So yeah, now we got a bunch of bolts, 8 on each rail here that go from the top down, and it's the same M48s. So yeah, if you love putting things together, this is a really fun machine to do that with, as it's kind of like I guess you can call it Lego set or something like that. Not hard to understand what goes where. So again, try to snug this up as hard as you can. All right, so we got one in. Let's do the other one. All right, and maybe I can raise this up so you guys can see a little better of where we put all these bolts. So yeah. So for step 6, they want us to tighten the y-axis bracket bolt. They kind of show you a picture here of what they're talking about, but I mean, we already tightened them, but you can reach them through the bottom here. There's holes, and we do have to move it a little bit to line it up here. Well, maybe a lot more. So once the holes kind of line up with these bolts here, probably go just a little more. We can go through here and tighten them up more, which honestly, they're already tight. But if you want to double check that, you can on all 8 of them. And this is actually a good thing that they show you this, because if you ever need to retighten them later because they got loose, you know how to do that by going from underneath. All right, so let's flip this guy around. And now we're really starting to look like we got something here. So for step 7, we'll be installing support brackets right here on the frame on the back. And they are in the adapters and brackets box, which are these right here. So this is the front, and then this is the back, and the brackets will sit like this. So the flat part towards where our other linear motor will connect. And so we're using the same M48 bolts, and there are 4 of them that go through the bottom into here. I'm gonna prop this up a bit with some filament and take my tool off so it's shorter and start them on there. So you can do it any way you want. Maybe going off the edge of the table might be the best, but I just want to run them down by hand, and then I can tip it over without worrying about the bracket falling off and snug it up underneath. And there we go. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So yeah, so far really enjoying this assembly, as all the parts are high quality and everything gives you a really good vibe. And so for step 8, we're going to be installing the little bracket that holds the screen here on the front right corner. And that's this piece here, and it mounts with 2 bolts that go again from the bottom up, and they are M4 8s. So I'm going to prop this up again because it makes it so much easier. Do the same thing I did with the other ones. And just like that, our screen holder bracket is on. All right, so for the next part, we're going to be installing more linear modules, and these say 8mm, which go on the base like this. So the wire goes underneath the bracket, and then they butt against the bracket. And this is looking at the back here. And there's going to be 6 bolts that go through the bracket into the module. What's interesting is on mine, all of them are 20mm, I believe. Well, actually, no, there is an 8, and our other one is also 8. The 20s go on the bottom, and then the x-axis, the z-axis are the 8s. So let's put this 20 back over here, and let's see if we can turn sideways here. But yeah, the module sits right here with the wire going underneath here, down, and then our connection point is going to face to the front. So this is the back, and that's the front. So let's go ahead and feed the wire through first, and then set the channel down there. And we're using the same M4 8 bolts, and 6 of them to be exact. That'll go through this bracket into the module. So yeah, run them all down first and then go back and tighten them up. Yeah, again, I loved how the instructions are very simple and picture orientated. So it's not hard to figure out where everything goes. All right, now we can snug them all up as tight as you can with this driver. So that one's done. Let's do this other one. So we're gonna feed the cable through, and it's gonna come out the bottom. And then the channel will sit right here. And snug them all up. All right, both of our z-axis modules are on. Well, I spoke too soon because on the next step, which is 11, we're going to put 4 bolts underneath in the same z-axis modules, which are also the M4 8s. And so it might have been better to leave everything loose, as it might need to move around a bit. But for mine here, it looks like it's perfect anyway. So I'm going to prop this up again, which makes it a lot easier to work on. And that's one side. And now we can do the other the same way. And we are done. So now we got a really rigid z-axis. All right, so for next part, we need to push the bed or the work platform all the way to the front. And so there's a little diagram showing you here not to do it from the sides, but push in the middle. And basically all they want us to do is just literally from the middle, push the whole build platform forward. Just like that. And don't be too hasty, just kind of moderately all the way to the front. And the reason for that is because we're going to be installing our x-axis to the Z, and it's also going to mount with the same M4 8 bolts, and there's 4 on each side. So looking at the back, and I'm not sure if this is the best way to show you, but I guess we can flip it around if we need to. We're going to grab our new module with the wire going that way and the bracket to the front, so like this, and we're going to set down right on top of these channels. I'm going to go ahead and move this piece here to the middle so we can kind of go back and forth here. And so what we need to do is move these down to where they need to go also. So we're just going to lightly push on them, as you guys can see there. So don't go crazy fast. These are not meant to go super fast. And this is quite important that you go all the way down, because you want this to be lined up perfectly and not, off on one side. And then so on the channels, there's going to be the outer bolts that connect to most outer bracket on both sides. And again, the same M4 8 bolts. I'm going to spin this sideways. So what you want to do is you want to go through the inner hole of the bracket. So not the most outer, but the inner. So we're just going to start it, and don't tighten it at all. You want it to be loose. And now we need to go to the other side and raise this up, and we can also go to the inner hole there, and that's how you start the channel. So you want to start it like that way it hangs flat, and then we can put the rest of the bolts in everywhere they go. So on the inside, they're actually on the outer hole farther away from the channel. And our last bolt here, snug everything up really good, and that should secure our x-axis. So apparently we weren't supposed to tighten all of the screws on this bracket, but everything was machined perfectly, so it didn't seem to matter. But that's the next 2 steps, tightening everything up. And then we need to lift the x-axis all the way up so we can start working on our next step, which is installing some cables with the splitter. So in the adapters and brackets box, we got the 2 splitters, and they're pretty much both the same. What we're going to do is we're going to plug both of our y-axis modules into one end, and then the other end is going to go out to the controller. And the splitter itself will mount right here. And these cutouts is where the cables will come in. And also the box that had the main controller or splitter also has 3 cables that are labeled Z and Y, and one is just blank. And we're gonna need the Y one, which will be the output from here. So let's go ahead and run these cables. So I'm gonna prop this up. Looks like I'm gonna need 2 of them here. So we're gonna run these under and then out the hole towards the middle more. And you probably wanna keep these little rubber bands that hold wires together, because we will need to cable manage everything. And then our Y cable will go through here and the other end to the controller later. So we can go ahead and plug it all in, or we can go ahead and mount it and then plug it in. But I guess I'm gonna go ahead and plug it. So it's pretty simple. And just like that, now we can mount it right here. I guess we'll do wire management a bit later once we install everything. And so for step 18, we're gonna need 4 M430 bolts, which are a little bit longer. And that's how we're gonna secure the splitter down to the base. And it's kind of interesting how the bolts hold it down, as they just kind of tighten on the top. But we don't need to go tight on these at all, just barely snug. And that is it. We got our splitter on. So for step 19, we're pretty much doing the same thing. Now it's the Z axis. So these 2 cables here that come out at these ends, and we'll have another splitter here. So we're gonna grab the Z wire, the other splitter, run the Z wires again through this hole here. Same way, plug them in. And then the output, go through the front one. And now we can mount it here, right next to the other one, with the same 430 bolts. And that's it. And then the X and Y wires will feed out this hole from the bottom this way. And before we do that, let's go ahead and flip this thing on its side and see if we can clean up all these wires, as I feel like right now would be a better time to do it than later. So let's go ahead and put these through, the Y and Z's. So there's no easy solution for this. If you want to, you can unplug them and kind of bunch them up and then put the rubber band on it. But yeah, technically not any kind of elegant solution under here. So yeah, I'm just gonna play around with them a bit, kind of get them shorter, and we'll flip it around and go to the next step. All right, so that looks much better. So I don't think this part matters too much, but it does look a little nicer when it's tidy. And also, if you do have some zip ties, that might be a lot easier just to zip tie everything. And actually guys, I just realized that you could probably use this Velcro tie to also help you out. And what's cool about this is that you can cut them in pieces. It all kind of sticks to itself when you go in a circle. So yeah, you could probably make 3 or 4 out of this. And also guys, I just realized that the 2 main cables, the Z and the Y, actually need to go that way towards the screen or the right side of the printer if you're looking at it up front. There we go. And that looks all nice right there. Now we can flip over. Going to the right side of the printer is where our cables will be coming out. And also you guys can see here from the top, our X-axis cable comes out on this side too. That's because our main module mounts right here on the back side. And that's going to be step 21. And you guys can see where that mounts, which is on the lowest threads here. And again, we're going to need 4 M430 bolts, and it'll go right there. So yeah guys, this thing is quite enjoyable to build so far and quite rewarding. All right, so that's on. So for step 22, we're gonna plug in the X, Y, and Z connections. On the picture, it shows it's the 3rd one down. And so the first one is X, which is gonna be this upper one, which plugs right here. Okay, so I just realized that I ripped this thing out. It's supposed to hold itself. See if I can put it back. Yeah, so when you pull these out, be careful not to pull it too hard because you'll completely rip out the little plug here. We're just gonna open 3. So from the 2 top, then we got 1, 2, 3, which is X, Y, and Z. So this is our X, and then Y, just labeled. It's the next one down, and then Z after that. Just like that. So step 23 is going to be plugging in our screen, which plugs in on the very bottom of our module. So let's go ahead and install it. And it is a USB-C connection, and maybe you guys can see, but we got quite a few little plugs here. So we got USB-C, USB, they're kind of together, and the other kind of USB. So there's quite a few options here, but this one goes here in the USB-C plug. And just like that. And the last step, which is 24, is going to be connecting our power supply. And the cables to that is in the cable box, which is this one here. And if you guys look at it, the pins are different on this than the rest of them, which they're symmetrical, indicating that this is the power cable. And also we have our regular plug for the power supply. So let's go ahead and plug this cable in. And it's going to be the first one from the bottom where the USB ports are. Let's flip the printer around and grab our power supply. And on the back, you guys can see the plug where the other end will go. And then our power cable will go here. And then we can set our power supply here somewhere next to the printer. Push this back a bit. And that's the basic assembly of the structure. Now we're not done because we still need to choose a platform and also choose a tool head up here. So I'm going to start with the 3D printing. And so we'll need this platform here, which is the heated bed and the build plate on top of that. And if we look here, we can see there's quite a bit of bolts that we have to install onto the frame. And so there's threads in the frame that bolts will go through and hold this thing down. And it lines up perfectly. And so since we're doing 3D printing, we can go to the 3D printing section, which is the next one over. And here's gonna show us what we should do next. So I guess it's starting with the tool head and then eventually going to the bed and also a filament holder we need to install also. So let's just go by the directions here since it'll make more sense. And we'll install the print head first, which is this module here. And by the way, I didn't show you guys, but if you click this one way, the whole door opens and you can see kind of the heat brake and the extruder gear there with the idler on this side, and it's on a spring. And to put it back, you just push over the pin on the right side and then kind of click it in and move it over and it locks it in. So yeah, the whole print head extruder assembly will mount here. Flip around, you guys can see a little better where it goes, but you're gonna need 4 M48 bolts, which will secure the print head to the X-axis module. And if you guys can see, it mounts on the outer holes towards the bottom. And on the bottom, they're more towards the top on the outer holes. But you can see where the threads are and line them up. All right. So now we need to grab an interconnecting cable. And you can tell that it is by the diagonal kind of pins. And we're going to plug it up here, right on the print head. And then from there, it's going to go to this side where our module is and plug into the very top. And on the manual there, they show you a picture that you want to put the cable behind the channel here, not in front of it like underneath. So kind of like over and around. So for the next part, we're going to be installing the spool holder, which goes on the other side away from the module. So going this way on the back. And the bracket that we need is this one right here with also this pin looking holder. So we're going to need an M410 bolt, just one. And we're going to install the metal holder into the bracket through this top hole, just like that. And then you're going to need 2 more M410 bolts, and we're going to mount it right here on these 2 threads on the very top, just like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and go all the way up with this, and we're going to tighten them up right here. So now you can put your filament on the spool here, and then it'll run to the feed port. All right, so we're done up here. Let's go down to our build plate, and we're going to install it onto the frame with a bunch of M410 little bolts that have like a taper on them. And we're going to need 22 of them. And this is the baggie, and I think we're going to need pretty much all of them. We're just going to line up the bed with the threads and then put a little bolt in each one. And there is a bunch of them. All right, so I've dropped in 22 of them and we actually got 3 extra. So now we need to go and tighten each one of them. I would recommend do the corners on the opposites end first before you tighten anything, or just run them down. That way it lines up, and then the rest of them should be perfect. If you want to run them down slightly and then go back and tighten them all, that would probably be the best thing. But either way, all these little bolts need to be tightened. And this is when I'm really appreciating this screwdriver, as this would take forever with a regular Allen wrench. All right, so now I'm just gonna go back and snug them all up, and that's it. And now we can put our magnetic build plate on, and it doesn't matter which side you use, and it magnetizes on there. All right, so yeah, we're done with that. The last thing we need to do is plug in the heated bed plug on the back, and that's gonna go right above the power port plug that goes to the power supply. Right there. Actually, guys, there's one more step, and it's this little bracket that holds the X-axis wire, and it mounts there on the channel. And I flipped the printer around, so we're looking at the back. And that's the bracket that was in the toolbox, this little guy here. And you're going to need 2 M48 bolts, and it mounts just like this with this piece pointing towards the back on the side here. So hopefully you guys can see that, but yeah, this is for the cable that goes to the hot end, and it actually will slot into there. And it keeps it from not getting tangled and whatnot else and sag, so kind of props it up. And so as this thing moves, the cable will be in the right place instead of dangling or hanging too low. So, and you can kind of adjust it, give it more or less. But if you go to the very side or to one end, you can kind of see how much you'll need. And now as it moves back and forth, it'll be good right there. All right, and so that pretty much completes our assembly and installation for the 3D printing.